Hello. Hello, I am live. Good greetings. Good greetings. Ah, okay, I think there's a problem. Okay, no, there. Hmm. Ha 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 ha. Okay. Hello. There we go. Oh, there was a sort of explosion in the distance. Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow. For some reason, it's getting complicated to get like the character to move. Ah, you would imagine it would be simpler than than all this, but seemingly not. Wow, wow. Dun, 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 dun. Getting asked to verify shit now. Brow, brow, brow. There's a YouTube control panel thing. Oh my god, why does YouTube have to know like my address to let me in on my account? Jesus. Anyway, I think I got it. I think everything's ready. There we go. Hello. Hello, everyone. I am Ravignon. Yeah. I am Ravignon. Yeah. You're. I was thinking of streaming because I have a channel where I stream, and that's just like a thing I do. But I am worried about the quality of my internet connection. So yeah, I've been worried about the internet because like a couple of months ago it was the case that I tried to stream on like a video game account, and then this account got oof, you can see the mouse. You're not supposed to be able to see the mouse. We Yeah, there we go. Then now you shouldn't be able to see it. Okay, so a long story short, I been streaming in like other kinds of services, like a YouTube account where I mostly play video games, for example. But I've had a problem with that account in the sense that it was difficult to stream when I changed apartments. I haven't told anyone this, like on like streams or things like that, but at the beginning of the year I had a bit of an issue because I had to move apartments. So a lot of work I was putting into, um, well, basically videos had to stop for a moment because I had to sort that out. I moved apartments from like late January to early February, And then that started consuming a lot of my time when it came to things like, semesters of university and things of the sort. At the same time, I was just kind of managing a difficult period in my life because I came out as a transgender woman to my parents. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm trans. Weh. So, yeah. I came out to my family. That was not easy. They're like, Catholic conservatives in a way. And yeah, it was a stressful season just kind of going out and telling everyone. But thankfully that's done. Somewhere along April, like April this year, I tried to stream on my gaming account. I have a gaming account which is called Ravine Lux. It's linked on my profile if you want to see it. Basically, that account has like a stream that I haven't deleted somewhere on the pings, where what you will see is that it starts lagging all the way, and there are like big chunks of the stream that are basically frozen, and that thing is very unfortunate because I was trying to stream on like an internet plan that is I don't know, like it was like 40 megabytes. Like the apartment where I live in right now started basically using that internet connection when it was like early January, for example, right? uh like the modem is more than 5 years old. It started being used in here in like 2020. Uh, it has just never been updated, and they were running on like 40 megabytes. Yeah, they were running on like 40 megabytes of internet, and then that kind of crashed my last stream. And it's only been like up until this moment, up until today, where I got the opportunity to actually like get that sorted out with the company, and now I have internet like of better quality it seems, and I am able to host a stream, which is very good and very encouraging. Hello, Sarma the stuffed grape leaves. Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, right now I am just giving a stress test to this internet connection. It's well, my objective is to see how long I can go, and if there are problems, maybe for an hour I will go. And if there are no problems, then I guess I'll just yeah, be aware that I managed to solve this issue. If you have any questions about the channel or questions about what I'm doing, where I'm going, things that are coming up as uploads, or like Patreon stuff that might be impending, then yeah, it's something you can do. And this is like the place to do it. Oh, fuck. Hello, Mario Mouse. Yeah. There we go. I've adjusted the chat. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm in the process of yeah, working on 2 videos at the moment. Wait. I stopped speaking. Did I stop speaking? This is such a fidgety piece of technology. Yeah, so I am working on 2 videos at the moment. One of these videos is a video on the history of political conservatism, and the other is a video on Japan. The video on Japan is a video I am very happy to work on. It's a very difficult subject, though, because I have put myself in the position where I need to do this very complicated thing, which is discussing the United States in a negative light during the Second World War, right? And that's generally a hard thing to do because especially for Americans. I don't know if any of you guys, at the moment are American, but it's a difficult thing for Americans in general to see critical discussion of the Second World War because um, since around like Vietnam, there's been a very powerful sense among people from the United States, right, that the US has not been engaged in wars that are just for a significant amount of time. So you look at Vietnam, it was like a cynical involvement. You look at Korea, it was like a cynical involvement. You look, even for example, like things like Serbia, like the American intervention in the Yugoslav wars, even as it was like backed up by the UN, with things like the bombing of Belgrade and stuff like that. There's a significant amount of Americans that were, for example, Iraq vets, Yugoslavia vets, whatever you would call it, that feel like the role they had in um, each and all of those wars was cynical. So they were involved because of geopolitical reasons, not really because of humanitarian reasons. And the problem with discussing the Second World War in a similar light is that, Americans do feel like the Second World War was sort of a ground or a floor when they fought a war and they felt like they were the good ones, right? Like, the US was definitely doing the right thing when it was fighting the Nazis. Like, I wouldn't question that. I don't think anyone with a bit of sense would question that, but we do need to remember, right, that the US in the 1940s was a country that was still operating under segregation. It was still operating under premises of, Roosevelt era American imperialism. And basically what the US did in a bunch of situations did follow a sort of broader geopolitical vision where they wanted to have a certain role and had to protect certain interests. And yeah, even in World War II, which is like the war where they had like a good role, they had cynical motivations, and some of those cynical motivations were in line with like white supremacy and the preservation of racism. So yeah, basically what I will be discussing is how the US had that kind of involvement during the Second World War, when how it aided, for example, the United Kingdom of Great Britain to protect some of its colonial holdings and some of its colonial arguments, to keep that position of prestige and a certain world order they were very invested in, even as the protection of that world order kind of meant bad things for a bunch of people. Buenas noches or bonsoir. At the moment, I am in Mexico, so I think buenas noches would be appropriate. I don't think anyone who's watching is currently in Europe. It should be like 3 a.m. over there. Like it's +8 or +7. Right now it's +7, right? So yeah, it's like very early in the morning. So yeah. Anyway, the Japan video is a video about like how Japan basically weaponizes American white supremacy uh, against like Europe, because Japan was making the very cynical argument that they would be able to be like an empire for Asians by Asians, even though it was like a fundamentally uh, Japanese supremacist project. But yeah, part of what I want to pitch in this video essay is that racism is a force that's debilitating and uh, negative in a society, and it can be the case that under various auspices, it can be weaponized against, even the people who use it to profit, because Japan, to some degree, tried to get itself involved in the like American civil rights struggle. MLK and people who were in his orbit, and W.E.B. Du Bois, and a diversity of people. There was also a movement called the Black Dragon Society, for example, and they were all just kind of interested in, you know, fighting American racism by allying with Japan, and that's it. That's one of the videos I'm working on. The other video I'm working on is a history of conservatism. That one will come out before the Japan one. If things go well, it will come out before September. About something I'm a lot more passionate about than history is. If you look at my Quebec series and compare it to like crowd series, you will see that I'm less interested in institutions and more interested in like the history of ideas. I'm in Europe. It's 4:45. It's 3:44. Wow, you people are. You shouldn't be here. Go to bed. It's like a weekday as well. Are you guys on like your summer vacation? I guess it's a Friday. Yeah. Yeah, so the video on conservatism is interesting because being a liberal or being someone on the left, I would call myself like a person on the left, very far left. You typically look at conservatives as people who don't really have like arguments, or that they're just kind of primitive in their thinking, right? Uh, Conservatives just seem to be this sort of political movement that is interested in, uh, you know, doing much of nothing, like putting forward a certain group more than anything. Uh, and here's the problem, right? Like, conservatives do have political theory. You know, uh, you see people like Alexandre de Tocqueville, you see people like Edmund Burke, you see people like Milton Friedman, or even Ayn Rand, though I think she's incredibly stupid. You do see that after the Enlightenment, there was this broad movement of the conservatives to try to justify something that had always been uh, kind of assumed as like a rule of supremacy, which was the preservation of like the ancien regime aristocracies. So, yeah, back then when we were mostly ruled by like Catholic kings and people who were in positions of power, just because they were kind of born into them or fell forward, fell upward. Yeah, that's the expression. Fell upward into those. Um, we didn't ask kings to have like a justification for their power, but now we are kind of in a world where it's really important that, after the Enlightenment, we understand why we do the things we do. And here's the thing: conservatives have that. Like, there exists a conservative political theory. It's less complex than I imagined. I was kind of disappointed when I actually saw what it was about. Um, but it's nevertheless very good at motivating political action, And we live in a world right now where a very conservative movement is kind of leading decisions in a plurality of centers of power, whether it is like the rising Eurocentrist parties in Europe, like RN in France, whatever the fuck Farage's party is in Britain, Trump in the United States. Yeah, there's a rising conservative movement, and then I guess a question that I see a lot of Democrats have in the United States, and like people who are sort of like liberal Democrats of a variety of sorts, is why is this happening? You know, like these people look at Trump, you know, the Stephen Colberts of the world. They just kind of look at Trump as someone who's like incredibly goofy and stupid, and then they turn out and say, why are they beating us, right? Like you have to understand that when we look at someone like Trump, in some way there is like a classist commentary from upper class liberals when they look at this guy and say, how is this idiot beating us, you know? And well, let me tell you that conservatives actually have an internal logic of operation that's not really discussed, and you will a lot more with a lot of facility, you'll have an easier time finding people calling a conservative an idiot than wondering what are the dynamics behind their success, right? So I will be making a video basically on conservatism. You know, I'm not a conservative, I don't want to be, but I will be making a video that's like conservatism for leftists. Like, if you want to look at their political theory and get a sense of what they think and what they believe. Um, that's sort of the point. I don't think I know how to defeat conservatism, but I do think that conservatism today, you know, like 2025, is a movement that doesn't have any real ideas. It doesn't have any real way of fighting problems like climate change, wealth inequality, the housing crisis, right? Like, if you look at Trump, you don't really get the sense that he's someone that cares about housing or things like that. But nevertheless, you know, they're very successful. And I think, you know, the case I will make more or less is that uh, it's not that conservatives are smart, it's that their opposition is very, very, very incompetent. And in the absence of, you know, something to oppose from the left, they are just kind of degenerating into this movement that has to invent itself. When, oddly enough, people on the right are very skeptical of political innovation, right? So that's kind of it. Thank you for working on our conservatism video. Yeah. Thank you for helping me put it together. The Japan one sounds fascinating. I heard a bit about it in a video by Tor's Cabinet of Curiosities regarding the Nation of Islam. Yeah. You know, I've been reading a lot of the writings of, like, what's the name of the founder? He skips me. Um, Elijah Muhammad. Yeah, the venerable Elijah Muhammad, as they call him. He has some like fucking bangers when talking about how he hopes the Japanese fucking come and destroy the United States. Yeah, it's crazy, you know, like looking at the alliance of black nationalism and Japanese imperialism in this very specific period of time. I don't want to say that black nationalism isn't like a left movement of the left, because of course it is. But there used to be a time, like turn of the 19th century, where Marcus Garvey and a lot of other representatives of like the national liberation movement of black Americans in the US were, you know, inspired more by the ideas of creating their own empire and their own kind of society than like a comprehensive theory of liberation as would be developed by W.E.B. Du Bois or Frantz Fanon in the following decades. So there used to be like a black imperialist tradition, you know, or like a black realist, you could call it, thing that saw black people as like a nation held hostage in the United States, and I think that's an accurate assessment. But the idea that it had was like, okay, let's operate as a nation. Then let's seek allies. Let's try to defeat our enemies. Things like that. Yeah. Really love your series on Quebec. Thanks for making it. Since you've spent so much time talking about Quebec, do you feel at all compelled to talk about the French Canadian outside of Quebec? Les Acadiens, les Franco-Ontariens. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I've been wondering if I should make a video maybe on like the history of the NDP or like French Canadians in general. It's definitely something I've been asked to do, but I spent maybe the past 4 years researching it and developing that series, and I have a bit of fatigue with the subject, I must admit. Uh, I have so much literature on Quebec, being on like a random city in Mexico, that if for some reason they decided to open a Canadian embassy here, they could. I would be like one of the people to hire, even though I don't have an education or background in Canadian anything, right? Because I already did like a level of research on Canada that I don't think most people would have. I know a bit, I would say, about the history of English Canada as well. And, you know, considering I want my channel to be a space where I discuss a plurality of subjects, I wouldn't be interested in cultivating the reputation of being like the Canada girl, like Madame Québec, tu vois? I don't want to be like an exclusively French Canadian channel, even though such channels do in fact exist. And I think Thomas Gauthier, for example, is he's not a politician. He's not a politician. He doesn't aspire to cover history as such, but he's like this young guy, comedian that puts himself forward and gives this sort of like social commentary mixed with comedy in French that is so common nowadays and so successful, right? So uh, I think if you want channels of that sort, you can find them. I am going to be going in a direction that promotes more a certain kind of like left wing sociology, moral foundations of politics, political theory, and history of ideas, which is like the things I'm more interested in. I could tell you a lot about political theory and, reasons why socialism has developed in the ways that it has developed and leftism has developed in the ways that it has developed, than the history of particular countries. Whenever I make videos discussing the history of particular countries, I actually have to go out of my way and uh, do research, right? Even though I already have like I would say an ideological and theory foundation. Uh, Most of the time, I don't have a formal education in history, right? So most of the time, what I do is that I use a method, and then I just kind of research uh, specific things when I want to learn more about them. I wish I understood them more. Conservatives? Well, the sad thing is that there's not a lot to understand. But if I talk more about the subject, I will spoil my own video on a stream. So I will keep my cards closer to my chest. If you have other types of questions, I can probably answer them. Do the pier that dropped bars and dissolved back into the earth? You're talking about Elijah Muhammad? Yeah. Yeah, Elijah Muhammad is like legitimately funny. I think. I don't know. I will tell you how I look at these things. Mm, there is this ongoing. How would I call it? In Black American history, there was a lot of impetus, I want to say. I don't know if that word exists in English, but like there was a lot of force and motivation to kind of build an identity apart from a white American identity. Like there's this poem. It stuck with me. about. I think it's called Africa My Homeland, or at least that's how it's popularized. Where this guy kind of says like, "Oh, my heart belongs to Jesus Christ, but I wish my God weren't white." In the sense that in the 19th century, if you were black in the United States, you pretty much were like in a situation where most of your life, most of your autonomy, most of your political and conceptual universe was controlled and defined by a people who alienated you. Like a definition of whiteness, in essence, in an American context, for example, is just not blackness, right? Like, as racism has weakened in the United States, it has weakened, for example, at different times towards Italians, towards the Irish. It has oscillated on how it feels about Latinos. It has withdrawn when it comes to Germans, but it's never rolled back for black people, and that's mostly because the way that the United States functions is by trying to keep an underclass, because capitalism just kind of needs an underclass. You need someone to like park the cars and clean the toilets, and if everyone was rich, you wouldn't have people to do like those kinds of jobs, right? So the United States kind of functions by keeping an underclass, and the underclass that it keeps is black people. And right now things aren't great, but in the 19th century they used to be like way worse. And going back to that time, yeah, like black people pretty much felt like they were politically alienated, they were ideologically alienated, they didn't have a history of written by themselves. Everything about their life was determined by other people. So there were a lot of efforts on the parts of historians, sociologists, what you would say, to just kind of create their own national mythology, in the same way that every group wants to create national mythologies for itself. And here's where you see, for example, the myth arise that Cleopatra was black. Cleopatra wasn't white. She wouldn't be considered white by, the definition of like the same 19th century anthropologists that were discriminating against black people, of course. But she wasn't black either. She was part of like a Greek, a Greek dynasty that happened to rule Egypt, descended from the Ptolemies. And Cleopatra was, in that sense, African, in that she was a settler from Africa. No, I mean, she was settled in Africa, but ethnically she was Greek, particularly among a group of people who they were like foreign rulers of a certain dynasty, of a certain country, in the same way that if you look at the Windsors in Britain, they're descended from, they're Germans, right? They're not English kings. They're Germans, Protestants, that came in during the Orange Revolution and all that. So in the same way, people in the United States, African Americans, had like a vested interest in finding an identity and a backbone and the base of like civilizational ideas they could use to develop their own independence, and they used a very poor form of anthropology to link, African American identity to Egypt, which isn't the case. African Americans have a lot more ties to West Africa, right? What happened is that people like Elijah Muhammad started creating entire mythologies and entire narratives about, how exactly you had, you know, how would I say, a black mythology in essence. And that's where you get, for example, this very funny thing that we like to look at in the internet these days, uh, which is the memes of Yakub, the guy who invented white people. And yeah, like he invented them on an island, and they're supposed to be like evil degenerations of black people, and black people held like civilization until like white people came along and fucking destroyed it. Like Elijah Muhammad is from that era, and the character of Yakub, the mythology of Yakub, comes from that generation of like African American nation builders, I want to say, that wanted to create a personal understanding of themselves apart from white people. Yeah. Eagerly awaiting that video. Thank you. That's a fair reason. You wouldn't want to feel pigeonholed. Yeah. I also enjoyed your videos on other topics, so wherever you go, I'm here for it. Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here, even though I take quite a lot to publish. Most of the time, I do keep an eye on the channel, but I'm also a trans woman living on my own in Mexico. I have to jump a lot of bars to get access to healthcare, and I don't live with my parents at the moment. I am kind of estranged from my mom, and I can't at the moment dedicate myself to doing videos. So yeah, I would like to. I think this channel has the potential to be like a good source of of the value that a YouTube channel on these subjects typically provides, but at the moment today I don't have like the time and energy to just pour my heart into it as I poured my heart into like Mario Machinima videos in in the 2000s, right, where I was just like a girl on my computer learning to edit and playing video games. Yeah. Yes, impetus exists in English. Yeah. Thank you. Like we don't even know where he was exactly from. Elijah Muhammad? Oh, yeah. I'm from Quebec, and my family used to go down to Florida in the winter in the 80s. Ah, you're snowbirds. That's what you're called, snowbirds. Because you migrate with the... Okay. And I remember being a kid asking my mom, why are all the cashiers white and the pack boys black? A lot of stuff like... Yeah, it's just the way that the US is. It's a sad reality about, capitalism needing underclasses. The way you can just kind of see it is that if it was white people who were poor, then racism wouldn't be a vector of struggle, or as much of a vector of struggle as it is today. Yeah, nice voice, thank you. It stood out compared to where I came from. Yeah. Do you believe France can succeed in attracting scientists back to Europe? Thus far, I see a lot of talk from Macron, but little success. My math and AI professors are still in America despite the MAGA. I think so. I think the problem with France is that it's going through its own problems when it comes to migration. If you're living in France for like a plurality of reasons, and you're a very successful person, and you care a lot about like your personal success, then it is useful for you to migrate to a society like the United States, because France will give you a very high quality of life, but it will punish your personal ability to get very ahead when it comes to your private sources of capital. And if you are someone working in like the key areas of American development, that is, for example, this will to create like an independent microchip industry in maybe Silicon Valley, for example, AI, for example, then the US will care a lot about having you in. And that was kind of the motive behind this like small civil war between like Trump and Elon Musk a couple of years ago. It was precisely that he did want to have immigrants on, but just like a certain type of immigrant, right? And then he went in and argued the case that you do want immigrants, you do want a certain kind of talent, and if your professors belong to that specific kind of talent, and then again, if they're not black, if they're white, meaning the same thing, then I think it is unlikely that they will part. But when it comes to, for example, IT development in India or in China, or like domestic science in Europe, or to the extent that it exists, right? Then we're just kind of creating like a cut-off generation where the US starts isolating and developing on its own, and then the rest of the world kind of figures what to do without them, I guess. I am and have been for a very long time, and I told people like crowd this a long time ago. I am a deep pessimist of the United States. I don't support them. I think they've always been like a force for more bad things than they are a force for good things. And when Trump started doing everything that he did, and when he won over Biden, right? I felt like I was proved right, but I wasn't happy about it. Like when you're a pessimist about a country that's so powerful and so close to you, because like I'm in Mexico, you kind of want to be wrong. You want to be wrong because being right about these kinds of things is not something that brings you happiness. It's like, I don't know, imagine you're tied to a post on the beach and the tsunami is coming, and you can't like move away because you're tied up, but the wave is getting closer and closer and closer every second that you see it, right? It's like I don't know. I think other activists or social thinkers have had some version of this issue before. Okay, let me move the chat somewhere more comfortable. Yeah, I think I think I'm not alone in having felt like this in my life. So yeah. The pseudo-history is what makes the mythology so counterproductive. The "we was" meme was more than a little damaging. Damn, I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Yeah, I don't think it was like a... I don't know. I don't want to... I don't want to judge. I understand the value that it had. I think that the community that black people call hoteps, which is a word that I'm saying just this once for the purposes of reference and then not saying ever again, is it had a role. It plays like a certain place in community building, and it's not my community and not my space to judge. Like that meme is a racist meme, and I will like leave my judgment at that, because yeah, like you don't want to be someone paying credence to these people and what they represent. It's bad regardless, and yeah, that's how I feel about it. I'm sorry to hear about your mom. Yeah, I'm sad too, but I think she's the kind of woman that was like raised a certain way, and I'm also like the eldest child. Like I used to also be a girl that had like a lot of expectations put on her because I happened to be like good at school. When I was 6 years old, I was already bilingual. that kind of thing, right? Like my parents they're not immigrants, but they very much have these like uh, social climber, middle class mindset where you want to go up and go up and go up in society, and you want to take opportunities and have like avenues for economic growth. And there is like a very legitimate worry uh, among people like that when you have kids who have, like, for example, a disability or a problem, or have to face society in a certain way that is challenging. For example, I have a brother that is a type 1 diabetic, and he struggles a lot with what that means for him. Um, the thing is that I think my parents see being trans as like a problem that is completely in my head, and if I could choose to be normal, then I wouldn't have to be basically, suffering the consequences of it. Like I'm making myself miserable by making a stupid choice. But yeah, that's obviously not what being trans is. It's just like a belief that they have, and uh, some of it comes that sort of worry about like having a child. I'm an adult, but like having a child that will be on like long-term medical treatment and that has to maybe face discrimination and things like that. That worries every parent, and I understand that. What I think is less legitimate, though, is like the religious motivations. And my mom, you know, she is a quite. In her heart, she's a very right wing person. She's not very politically articulate. She's very much the kind of person that goes off vibes when it comes to having like moral decisions, but she's very committed to the vibes. Very committed to the vibes. Like the things she thinks and the way she feels about stuff are just kind of materials that she's already very compromised with, and I don't think she's gonna like roll back on whatever that is. So yeah, I have an understanding of her point of view that is deeper than any understanding she's ever had of me. So I here's the thing, right? When after a certain age, uh, I think when you look at your parents, you should just kind of understand that they're adults that are older and much more established than you in their ways of thinking, and you can choose how you relate to them, but you can't change their minds, right? So, um, yeah, it's basically that. What I'm responsible for, and what, if you're LGBT or just have like any kind of like family of sorts, what you're responsible for is um, making the assumption that people won't change, that not that they can't change, but like for practical purposes in the present they won't change, and that you are empowered to choose whether you want them in your life, uh, and whether you what kind of relationship you would choose, knowing that you can't convince people of things, right? Because changing people's convictions, if you're raised in the Enlightenment tradition, let's say, of sociology, you think it's something as easy as just making the right arguments, but uh, oftentimes it's not. People have like convictions, a lot of convictions that come from like deeply emotional places, and you can't really speak to the convictions without speaking to the emotions. I think that's one of the problems that like Ethan Klein, is having right now. Um, because he's definitely a guy that uh, has a certain set of political convictions, but you can't talk to him about the convictions without taking away from him an explanation for why people did bad things to him. And if you go to like someone who's been bullied or who has like this mental map of possible reasons for why they're receiving harassment, and then you come in and tell them, like, no, you're wrong about your reasons, right? You have an inaccurate judgment of reality, then the problem you kind of run into is that you take away from this person the means to explain the reasons behind their pain, and that's much scarier to them than any old argument would be. So that's kind of how I see it. My mom, yeah, she's kind of like going through something that she has to go through, and I have to go through like my own problems. I can't pick up her own. Thanks for inventing me, Yakub, the glorious scientist. Yeah, same. I'm Mexican, but like I'm considerably pale for a Mexican because my parents are from the north. Like when I was a baby, my eyes were gray, and right now I have like they're clear, like they're not brown, and yeah, I also happen to be a Yakubian ape of some sort, but I wouldn't identify as white because I'm Mexican. I don't think if I were in a post-colonial country I would be treated as a white person. I think in France one time people thought I was an Arab. No, which is weird to me because like my hair is very straight. I at least the Arabs I know don't have like straight hair, but maybe I haven't met that many of them. In Mexico you don't really meet people from like Arabic countries, or immigration is very limited. The bill passed. Oh yeah, the big beautiful bill. The government of the United States just voted to like destroy itself. That's crazy to me. But well, I'm making a video on conservatism. If you want to know what's up with that, you will see. The Canadian-American relationship feels like can't live with them, can't live without them. It's the same in Mexico, to be honest. I'm an American and I have the same feeling, yeah. There are times I've thought about visiting the United States, but it always goes back and forth depending on who is in power there. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to take a plane to Canada recently, but precisely because of American political migration law, it's harder for Mexicans to go to Canada now. Now, you might ask, for example, what the fuck? Like, why does American law matter to Canada? And here's the thing: there was like a group of like incredibly hustler, like smart Mexicans that were paying for flights to Canada, and then going to like the really, unchecked parts of the border, and then crossing to the United States. So like instead, if you have a bit of money and you want to like get into the U.S., you don't cross through the Mexican-American border. You fly to Canada and then you go south, right? So I guess Trump and like his cadre of like anti-immigration loonies started looking into that with care, and now Canada asks Mexicans to have either a Canadian or an American visa, even if you're just like doing like an onboarding flight. Like if you're taking a stage flight, we need American visas to enter Canada now, even if we're just like staying at the airport and taking a plane somewhere else. And I am very upset about that. Because I was planning to take like a staged flight to see someone and travel to France this year, but I needed to postpone that basically. I'm hoping my country's federal institutions can hold up, or that my state can assert itself. I think it will. I think, Trump is just kind of proving that he has no idea of what he's doing. He's putting forward a vision of politics that is terrible. But that vision of politics will nevertheless, have like a morning after, right? Like right now you're suffering from, you're having the night out, let's say, but in a couple of months, like people will start noticing that they don't have Medicaid, that they don't have food stamps, and people that were, mobilized, that weren't mobilized for neither Trump nor Harris will get mobilized against Trump, like, during COVID. Like, you have to remember that the president to get the most votes out of any election in history, Donald Trump, I mean, Joe Biden on like the 2020 election, didn't win because he was like this great genius that ran a good campaign. He spent most of his campaign being hidden by his team. People voted against Trump. And now I think that for reasons very similar to the other ones, they're going to vote against Trump again. American here in Alabama, of all places, I hate seeing my country being to ditch and damage others along with it. I'm sorry. I hope you have, like, something to lean back on. I know that Americans, being like a liberal or a leftist in the South can be a very alienating experience. And I believe that might be your case. And thank you. Like, your election system isn't fair. I just hope you can, like, eventually be validated for being in tune with the good causes and the right sort of points of contention of the society that you live in. People like you are very valuable. And if you choose to move out, like, it would be completely valid, but, just the act of enduring is very important. I know of trans people, well, not only trans people, but like just general LGBT people living in the American South that have had incredibly alienating experiences. And yeah, like in some degree that must be true of like everyone. I do empathize a lot with those of you in the USA. I cringed thinking about how close we came to Polievre. Yeah, winning and repeating parts of your story here. I hope you can pull yourselves out of this mess. Carney, I don't like Carney, I have to say. He's like a neoliberal. He's always been in the pocket of like bankers throughout his entire career. He's worked on banks. But here's the cool thing. Carney has a non-binary child that he's not estranged. So, in my book, that's like good enough. Like if a premier of Canada prime minister, right? If a prime minister of Canada can have like a child that's like gender non-conforming and not alienate them, that's more than I can ask my mom. So, I can't disagree with Carney, but I know that he has like a good heart, right? Like, at least that's kind of how I've been made to feel, My parents have the same worries about me being trans, though it's mostly from a religious standpoint. You're not alone, hello. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Alex, by the way. If you want to visit, most of us are way more welcoming than our government would suggest. Yeah, I know. I've been very happy with Canadians. I'm from Eastern Washington. It's rural, loads of fields. Ooh, okay. I would like to visit New York one day, and my friends who live in Vancouver, and I have thought about going to PAX in Seattle one of these days. Ooh, Ravi is famous? I happen to be. Hello, Kiara. I'm a VTuber, for those of you who don't know. Like, I have a streaming channel where I do VTubing, and VTubing typically consists of, like, an animation and an artist. So you need to pay someone to, like, do the drawing, and then you need to pay someone to, like, make the drawing move. It's a composite project. And, yeah, basically, Kiara is my animator, and I love her work. If you are into like VTubing or things like that, I do suggest you follow her. She's like very cool. I've been to some of her streams, though most of the time I'm doing, right now I'm attending a congress of like what would I say, it's like AI. I'm attending an AI congress. So I don't have a lot of time to watch streams. Now the Mandarin Mussolini needs to build another one. What? What are you talking about? That's totally wild that America can control your ability to come to Canada. That should absolutely not be the case. Yeah, it's crazy. It was Trudeau that did it, because Trudeau had like a period of his moment of trying to sort out the situation with Trump, where he was doing appeasement. Like he was desperate to, um, yeah, get like peace with Trump, because he was saying like a lot of stupid shit about Canada becoming a state and things like that. Uh, and he changed a lot in his strategy. Like he evolved in at some moment he was saying like, oh yeah, like we're gonna stand up to Trump. Then he was saying like, oh, we're gonna stand back against Trump, things like that. But in one of those moments where he was doing appeasement, he basically came forward and told the US like, oh yeah, we're going to help you, right? Like we're going to help you block Mexicans from entering, just like give us a sort of concession. So yeah, what Democrats need to do is blame. We can't let the normies forget who and what are responsible. I don't know. I think what Democrats need is a project, because you don't have a project. Like the Democratic Party since like the 1860s has operated on telling the Republicans they have like terrible ideas. Like you have a political project, we don't, but we are better than you as an alternative, because of what the things you do are kind of bad. And here's the thing: you don't have. I think it's bad if you continue to do that. I think what you need is something closer to like the FDR model, where you actually make policy prescriptions and offer people something else. I'm very happy with Soran Mamdani, for example, the guy who just won New York, because he's running as a Democrat, but he's running on a platform of what would you say, of having like an actual plan to address housing, economics, that kind of thing. Saying like we're better than the Republicans is something that worked when the Republicans were like Bush and shit, but like right now that's not going to fly anymore. The Democrats need like an actual real political project. Um, what I can't stand Carney either. He's already said about totally ignoring some of Canada's biggest issues unfolding to Trump and Daniel Smith's demands. Yeah, I haven't kept up with whatever he's doing, but I am not optimistic about the guy. Like uh, in any other circumstance, I wouldn't have voted for Carney. Like I would vote for Carney on the sole basis that he wouldn't be terrible for trans people. But yeah, yeah. It's okay. Your channel is so cool. Thank you. I, I'm embarrassed whenever like my VTuber friends, or like people who know me from VTubing, see like my political commentary channel, because it's like VTubing is a space where everyone just kind of goes out of their way to be wholesome, to provide people with escapism, to just sort of put their best feet forward and to try not to alienate people. And like political commentary is the complete opposite of that. Yeah, but I appreciate you staying by and sitting with us. Yeah, though I respect VTubers a lot more than I respect a lot of political commentary channels. Because um, when it comes to VTubers, especially like the ones that exist on Twitter as a space, there's a lot of drama and a lot of fights and a lot of very ugly disagreements. But people just actually are open about the fact that they dislike each other. Like they go out of their way to like go up in your face and say, I don't like you because you have a boyfriend, right? Like like things like that. um they will like yeah, they will make things like up close and personal. But when it comes to like political content creators, especially YouTubers, we're exactly the same kind of person. We're petty. We don't like criticism of our work. We, I've seen the same kind of drama. Motivated for the same kind of reasons. But when you're like a political person and you have like a political project or like a worldview or whatever, you can shield being an asshole with this idea that you're doing it for like a good cause, right? And um, there are YouTubers like Bud Empanada, for example, that I think do that. You know, they have very petty and personal disagreements and very angry personalities and a lot of hatred for people in general, right? But because they have a political reading of like the way things are, uh, they operate in a way that you know that they feel justified in being mean to people. And honestly, I don't think we should be mean to anyone. I'm I don't know. I'm very conflict averse, but the thing is that that's kind of why it's funny that I ended up doing like history political content because I don't have the personality for you know getting up close and personal with people and fighting them. Um, yeah, but I do like VTubers more in that sense because you know people are more transparent about the fact that they have egos and that they do a lot of things in the name of their egos. If you are finding people who do like Twitch political commentary or YouTube political commentary and that get into dramas and debates and things like that, oftentimes they're motivated by their egos and not really by making things better. Because, you know, people who are actually invested in um, getting the world to a better place are not fighting uh, internet wars, right? Like, think of the biggest internet war going on right now. It doesn't matter and it will have a negligible effect on politics. People who have the time to, you know, watch a YouTube video or make a YouTube video about another guy that they hate uh, are people who have a lot of spare time, and people who can watch it are also people who have a lot of spare time. And you know, real political discourse and real political operation is happening at the level of the working classes. You know, people who can't like be bothered with the negativity of what happens on the internet. So, you know, I try very hard to not have an ego. I don't know if I'm succeeding, but it's definitely something I try. Good point about the project. That's why we don't need to moderate. Yeah, we need a coherent vision. I just also think we need to remind folks why they need this other vision. Yeah. Expect China to surpass US in most STEM fields. Oh no, they already done. Like, you know, when it comes to universities, like the top 10 universities in the world by publication, by publication I mean researchers who publish like, you know, science papers, scientific articles. Uh, the top 10 universities, 8 are Chinese. The second place is Harvard, and then I think like the seventh place is like a university in Germany, but the rest are Chinese universities. You know, in terms of research, China already publishes like so much more than the United States. It's a lost race, I believe. China is developing its own micro transistors. They already have like a thorium nuclear reactor, which is like a nuclear reactor that's we could say safer than the ones that we know right now. So yeah, I don't. We already live in the Chinese century, right? Like we already live in the moment where China will is like the dominating power. I think the interesting thing about China is that it's a very selfish country in the sense that most of its ambitions are like inwards. You know, you'll see that China cares a lot about managing itself more than it cares about like getting up in the business of others. That might change, of course, as their power projecting capabilities rise. But here's the thing: when it comes to like doing nothing and sitting back and cultivating your success, it's like China is already doing very well, and I think that's just something that we kind of need to expect because we live in a world where the best kind of contribution you can have to an economy is like human creativity, right? Like the moment the world's economies started becoming world economies, service economies, where what matters is like having creative people, working people that have lot of ideas and want to do a lot of innovation. The best thing you can have is a lot of brains, and China has more than 1.5 billion people, right? Like this is what I find so dumb about like the American immigration policy as it is. Like what you want, the most valuable resource you can have right now for any country is human beings. It's like people thinking, creating ideas, putting things forward. You would only believe that China wouldn't dominate a world where, brains and humans are the most valuable thing in an economy. If you were like a complete racist and thought that, Chinese people somehow can't do those kinds of things, right? Even though for the longest amount of time they held like the most successful civilization out of many, right? Same goes for India, like India eventually will become more important. And I think that's normal and desirable if we move to a world that's more democratic in any sense. It will make sense that most of the world's power is in Asia, because most people are in Asia, right? And a world that's democratic is a world where Asia just kind of pulls the weight because there's more humans there. Yeah. I look forward to voting out the Coalition Avenir Québec next year. I'm hoping that meaningful change can occur provincially. Yeah. I think PQ is going to win. I'm excited for that. Like PQ in 2025, like that's crazy to me. I think China has its own problems, especially with this massive debt spread out among all the local governments. Yeah, well, we'll see. One thing that China has been doing very well is just like managing itself. So, I'm more optimistic about them than I am about the US, which is sad. I ignore drama. Yeah, better to ignore drama. I miss when more people would just bully others online instead of attaching a cost to their bullying. It's all bad, but being pretentious makes it even worse. Yeah, drama is so annoying. Yeah, no, like, I don't know. I think there's a video game that just came out that's like fucking crack to me. Yeah, which is called Uma Musume, Pretty Derby. It's about horses, but the horses are like girls, and they're anime, and they race. They race each other, the way horses race each other in like gambling courses. Yeah, so there's like a horse racing basically with anime girls, and if you watch the animation and the narration and all of it, it's entirely prompted, like it's entirely prompted, but it's so exciting. It's so exciting to watch like a race, to get your heartbeat racing and to see what's essentially a drama, right? Like what's essentially theater, because people they make theater about these things. Like drama fundamentally is a type of political entertainment, right? Not drama in politics, right? Like drama in general is a type of entertainment. The word drama itself comes from a genre of theater, and people like theater. People like being told stories, and I guess when that story is like the real disagreements between two people, that can be fun. And the more interesting the story, the more people will watch it. And I think in that sense, Nikocado made a very beautiful piece of art with his weight loss uh, journey thing. You know, the 2 steps ahead and stuff. He made an amazing commentary on the nature of the internet. Like he pointed out that a lot of people just want to be prejudiced and angry and mad at things. And you know, while he had like this backlog of videos he was slowly posting, he lost the weight, and then he moved on with his life, you know, having trolled the rest of us. Oh my god. I am I have to say, right, like I am slightly overweight. I have been trying to like go to like a nutritionist, get something sorted. I used to be like a marathon, well, not a marathon. I ran like 10-kilometer races and things like that. And then because of COVID, I stopped, and then I, you know, kept eating like if I was running. And then, you know, I put on weight during COVID that I haven't been like successfully able to just like put down again. And you know, Nico Kato, who was like 400 pounds at some point, beat me on the weight loss on the weight loss journey, which is crazy to me. I can't believe that. Yeah, I felt so owned. You know, like you have to have like a level of detachment of your own point of view if you want any kind of degree of success on the internet. Because yeah, like holy shit. That guy is my hero. I think he, you know, he made a smarter piece of commentary than I think a lot of us in like the in this sphere will ever get to make. Yeah, yeah, he was more effective. He reached more people, all that kind of thing. Have a good day. Have a good day. Gotta duck out and pay some attention to the love of my life. This has been a nice chat. Yeah, enjoy. Enjoy spending time with your partner. Yeah. I think I'm gonna go for like 13 minutes more. I think I've tested the stream long enough. I know it works. I know the thing I'm trying to do will function as I want it to function. So, yeah. This is like in a conference where we're just kind of like done with it, and you know, the main event is over, and you know, the opponents are just like taking out the beers and you know, having a very casual conversation. Yeah, that's kind of that moment of the stream. Well, I say stream, but you know, like when an exposition is ending and people are just kind of like, they know they're wrapping up. Everyone's tired. Wall-E is the most realistic sci-fi dystopia, not Terminator or 2001. People just don't want to admit it. Yeah, I wish. You know, it's so weird to me that when I was 8 years old, when I was 7 years old, for example, there was so much talk about climate change and about how we needed to do something about it. And I became a scientist because I wanted to. Well, mathematics is, it's complicated. There's a complicated conversation whether it's a science or not, right? But like, um, I was motivated to do something about climate change, and then I guess I just kind of came to realize with the age that we've known what to do about climate change for like maybe 35 years at this point. What's missing is like a lack of political and like will, I will say. Uh, you know, it's not going to be your grandma recycling that's going to save the planet. Like, it's going to be changes in industry practices. And yeah, it's crazy to me. We've never reached the point where that happens. Mm, yeah, I think we need to have real problems again. And no, I don't know. The thing is that, like, as a trans woman, right? I find this conversation that we are like the most important issue for right wingers so stupid. Because like I've met a lot of trans women in my life, right? I am probably the most political one of the bunch. Most trans women that I've met are like super happy to just live a normal life, stealth away, don't really call attention to themselves, don't really talk about the fact that they're trans. If they could, if we had the medical technology, I believe most of us would choose to have children. Like trans people, trans men, I can comment less on their experience, but like most trans women that I know would be happy to live just the white picket fence life, the most like normal, non-controversial kind of um, path in their journeys, right? Like, and I find all this bullying towards it's so weird, right? Because uh, yeah, like we wouldn't be such a problem if people didn't choose to make us a problem. Are you into any sci-fi series? Hi. Yeah. Uh, when I was a kid, I read Fallout Equestria. That's like fan fiction. I wouldn't know if you would consider it a series. Uh, I am. I don't watch Star Trek, but of what I've watched of Star Trek, I've enjoyed. When I was a kid, I had like, well, not a kid, like a teenager. I had like a Battlestar Galactica phase. Um, what else? I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched TV. Most of what I'm doing right now is like reading audiobooks. Like for entertainment, what I do is that I go out on walks and then I download like an audiobook onto my headphones. Well, not to my headphones, to like a phone, and then I plug headphones into the phone. And then I just kind of walk like maybe I don't know, 6 miles, for example, and then I just listen to the audiobook while I'm walking. So yeah, it's been a long time since I watched TV, but when I was watching TV, I was kind of enjoying like the Flash series, for example. I thought the Flash was really fun. Hmm. I was also watching. Uh, I don't know. It's been a while. Like I couldn't tell you what I watched when I watched TV. The last thing I watched on Netflix was like Blue Eye Samurai, which I really enjoyed because as a trans woman, I, I'm I'm not like all that femme even then. Like it's so sad. I felt so sad on like my gender discovery journey when I found out I was like just like a binary trans woman because I identified as like non-binary for a long time, and then I just realized that nope, I'm just a girl. Okay, but even then I'm m- more masculine than even among women. Just my personality is just kind of assertive and yeah, I have like a masculine personality and I'm comfortable with that. I don't know if there's like a word for like a tomboy when she's an adult, but basically that. And yeah, when I watched Blue Eye Samurai in the character of like Mizu, yeah, I felt very identified with how she carries herself. I felt represented, you know. Um, and yeah, a lot of people say that representation is like not important. That like why would you want to put forward that kind of thing? Like different kinds of people in art. But I do value it. I know, for example, of like Mexican Americans who are like immigrants to the U.S. that have been there for a very long time, that just kind of feel like they're outsiders to society, and they watch this actor that has an accent that was like in a Marvel movie. You know, he has this very heavy Mexican accent. Like, I don't know. I look forward to voting out the CAC next year. I'm hoping that a meaningful change can occur provincially, if not federally. You know that kind of thing. uh, yeah, and they're happy to see that. You know, they're happy to see like Mexican accents uh, on American films because it does make them feel like their existence is worth representing in art. You know, like they're part of society, and that their being part of society means that they get to have their stories told. So, you know, when I was a kid, well, not a kid, when I was a teenager, I was a bit of a little shit with that kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, who cares about representation? Like, you can identify yourself with whoever you want. And I guess I just was kind of living out my autism in a way because I didn't identify with characters as is. But you know, I've grown to appreciate it because yeah, I do know that people who feel less included in in society do like when their stories get told, and when they're made to feel part of a community of equals. Because you know, if you're like white in the US, for example, you don't have to think too much about representation because representation is basically out there. You know, like every billionaire is white, every like famous actor is white. There's like a bunch of movies of like this trope called the impossible white guy where you know it's like Saving Private Ryan, for example, where you have this soldier that goes out and behaves like a badass in a Middle Eastern country and things like that, you know. Like if you want to see your life and your experiences on the big screen, you know, like on film, it's like the easiest thing in the world. And you know, you don't have to think about representation because you already have it, right? Like it's not even a problem that you can conceive of because like your stories are already being told. Your point of view is already being portrayed. You're already being given things to identify, and then these people come by and say like, "Oh no, you know, why do we have to represent like other things?" Like you know, get over it. There's this thing where like a couple of years ago, well, months I think, everyone was mad that they were making like the Little Mermaid black because she's like from a Danish fairy tale. But you know the thing is that if you want a Danish fairy tale or if you want to see like a white mermaid, like you already have the Little Mermaid TV series, you already have the original movie. You can like read a book, you know, without pictures and imagine the mermaid, right? Like, you know, if you're looking for a presentation of like girls with red hair, for example, there's no shortage of them. But yeah, when it comes to like Disney princesses, black people were like underrepresented for a long time, and you know, it's been years since I watched a Disney movie, and I don't really care what people do in them for whatever reason, right? Um, what would I say? Yeah, I don't. I haven't watched like a Disney movie or been invested in like Disney stuff for a very long time. Uh, I was because one of my VTuber friends, Okamenko, was kind of into Disney, and then I had like this moment 2 or 3 years ago where I was looking at Disney stuff again, but I don't know. I just like the Goofy movies, and I don't know. Yeah, I like the Goofy movies, and I found the Mermaid movie funny because like I know a guy who's like very old, and he really enjoyed the Little Mermaid movie because he felt he went scuba diving once, like to see the fish. Yeah, in like he went to the beach and he had like a diving thing where he was on the water and just kind of looking around. Uh, yeah, he had like these boomer experience of going to a scuba adventure for the first time, and he was like super happy because he saw fish and they had different colors. And then when he saw the Little Mermaid movie, he was super happy because there were like fish as well, like the CGI fish, and it was very realistic. And yeah, he had like the time of his life because he's like the dad of one of my high school friends. He was basically saying like, oh shit, it's exactly like the fish. It's exactly like the fish in the scuba trip. Like for some people that's just kind of like the value of the experience. Yeah, and it's great, like if you can have someone like a movie because of like scuba diving or like having like a cinematographic experience, like that's good enough. Like I bet you that a bunch of the people who were complaining about that movie didn't even watch it. They're tourists, you know they're outraged tourists. They go around the world looking for things to be angry about. And you know what? Don't be an outraged tourist. Life is so short to engage art in such a such a slanted way, such a negative way. You could be looking at things that you actually enjoy or working to create stuff that's beautiful, right? I think that's just kind of my point of view and my takeaway. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough. I will probably. It's a bit late for me to go work out, so I think I'll just take a shower and go to sleep relatively soon. I have some dishes to do and probably a couple of books to read, so I guess I'll go do that. All right. Jordan Peterson is the god of outrage tourism. Yeah. Honestly, I think someone needs to take away his internet connection. you know, when you have friends that come along and tell you like, dude, log out, please log out, because he's clearly the kind of person that is easily upset, and he has a lot of empathy for for like a diversity of problems, and he's getting angrier every time. He's getting more stressed, um, crying of stress, uh, mad about stress. He has enough money to retire. I don't know why he doesn't call it quits right now, but I guess if I was as famous as he is, I would also struggle like stepping back. At that point, your point of view probably becomes like, I know I have an impact on the world. I know I'm going to be safe. So like, what's the most I can do with my time right now? And he is like an ideological nutter, and he's just doing the worst possible things he can do. But he's having a lot of you know emotional feedback from it. And I guess that's kind of a challenge, right? Like, what do you do if you become super famous and then you just decide to step out of the public eye, right? Like, could you live without that level of attention? Could you live without, you know, without knowing that, you used to have a place in the spotlight that you no longer get to have? I guess that's his dilemma. But again, it's like an older guy dilemma. I'm in my 20s. I'm not gonna bother with what goes on his mind.
I can kind of think of it because I used to be a Jordan Peterson fan. Mm, but then I saw the kind of people and community that he fostered, and I got completely disenchanted with that fact. Uh, anyway, I think I did what I wanted to do. I see that my internet connection works. I will be ending the stream now. Thank you all for coming. I now now will be continuing my day, and I hope you continue with yours. Have a rest, a good rest of your day slash night, and I'll see you when I see you. Hopefully on a new video very soon. Bye bye.